Welcome to iLearn IAS session on Ancient Medieval India and Art and Culture. This is the third session in the series we present before you as iLearn IAS Theory of Films 2.0. I hope you have watched the sessions before this, including the Theory of Films session and the session on environment. Right? Now, before we start the session, I recommend you to subscribe to our Telegram channel iLearn IAS so that you get all the study materials that are associated with this session. Right? So we'll start with our session. So today we are going to discuss on ancient medieval India art and culture with the perspective on UPSC preliminary examinations. Right? How do we approach this subject for UPSC preliminary examinations? That is the purpose of this session. Okay. So as you all know, art and culture is one of the most feared subjects along with ancient medieval India. These two subjects are very much interconnected. Okay, you cannot separate these two because the syllabus is very much interconnected. Now, this is one of the perhaps the most feared area in the entire preliminary syllabus. Why? Because people generally identify this subject as very vast, very factual, very confusing. Okay, and generally there is this myth about this question, about the questions that you cannot predict the questions that come in art and culture. Okay, there is no way of predicting the areas that questions are asked. So there is a lot of confusions regarding this subject among the students, among the candidates appearing for UPSC preliminary examinations. Right? So the result of this confusion, this fear is that often students tend to ignore the subject. Okay, they believe that they can manage without art and culture, that it is better to manage without art and culture. Now, is this a feasible strategy? Is this a feasible strategy? No, this is not a feasible strategy because removing art and culture from your focus can cost around 10 to 20 marks in your preliminary examinations. Questions will be anywhere between 8 to 10 questions will be asked in the preliminary examinations from this subject. Now, if you lose that, you lose around 20 marks, and 20 marks make a lot of difference in preliminary examinations. So you cannot ignore this subject, right? So how do we go about it? If you cannot ignore, you need to have some sort of strategy into it. You need to put some mind into it. Now, how do we handle this subject, right? By the end of this session, you will understand the patterns of UPSC, understand the areas of questions that UPSC uses to produce questions for art and culture in preliminary examinations, right? So what is the use of this session? This session intends to declutter the subject of art and culture for you. It intends to declutter it, right? Why do we declutter it? We want to declutter it because this will enable you to produce maximum profits out of your investments into the subject. We want to convert this very vast factual subject into something that can be studied efficiently. Okay, that is our aim of this subject, aim of this session. Okay, we want to ensure that this subject can be studied efficiently. Right? Now, how do we do it? We have analyzed the patterns of questions, the entire set of questions asked in the past 9 years, starting from 2011 till last year 2019 in the subjects of art and culture and ancient medieval India, right? And we have created certain results from this analysis and we are going to present it before you. Now, by the end of this session, you will have seen how UPSC has asked questions from art and culture in the past 9 years, and you will clearly understand there are certain repeating patterns, there are certain areas to focus on, okay, which can help you convert your study of art and culture into a smart study, right? Now, just like the sessions before, this entire session will be divided into two sets of analysis. The first set of analysis will be known as general analysis. What is general analysis? General analysis will be certain insights into the subject of art and culture and ancient medieval India as a whole. Okay, so it's a general perspective on subject. and we are going to present some general takeaways, okay, that are applicable to the subject as a whole. Okay, so that will be the part known as general analysis. And second part will be topic wise analysis. Now, what is topic wise analysis? We are going to take, we have arranged the most prominent areas or most favorite areas of UPSC in this subject into 10 areas. Okay, we have divided the questions into 10 areas. Okay, we have found out that these 10 are the most favorite areas of UPSC. Now, what we are going to do in topic wise analysis, we are going to analyze each of these sections. You can see the sections on the screen. Indian philosophies, Bhakti and Sufi movements, personalities, terminologies, economic and society, Vijayanagar, handicrafts, religious sites, performing arts, architecture and painting. We are going to analyze each of these sections into it, and from each of these sections we are going to have specific takeaways. We are going to have specific takeaways that will enable you to create a very focused plan for each of these areas. Okay, those takeaways could be their sources, it could be the most favorite areas within these areas. Okay, that will depend on the topic, but by the end of this topic wise analysis, you will understand what are the ways in which you can tackle each of these areas when they are asked in UPSC, and by covering these areas you can cover 80% of the questions asked in UPSC in art and culture and ancient medieval India. So that will be the format of the program. We will be moving in a analysis takeaway format. Okay, now we are going to move into the general analysis. In general analysis, we have 3 general takeaways about this subject, right? So what is takeaway number 1? Takeaway number 1 is that there will be on an average around 8 to 10 questions from the areas of art and culture and ancient medieval India every year. That is the average number. Sometimes the number may go up, sometimes the number may go down, right? And the difficulty levels will be moderate to tough. Okay, the difficult levels will be moderate to tough. Okay, we are not saying that it is easy always, we are saying that it will be moderate to tough. You can see the number of questions asked from 2011 in the graph. Okay, started from very low numbers in 2011. Okay, from there you can see numbers have hovered above 8 consistently, or at least 8, right? Last year there were around 11 questions. Okay, 11 questions from art and culture and ancient medieval India. Okay, so you can expect a similar number in the next year also, 2020 also, 8 to 10 questions, right? Or perhaps 11 questions. So the takeaway is that you cannot ignore this subject. You cannot ignore this subject because it will cost you around 20 marks, right? So that is the first takeaway. You cannot ignore this subject. What is the second takeaway? The second takeaway is that despite all the myths about this subject, all the fears about the subject, there is certain patterns to the questions asked, right? There are some repetitions. Okay, there are repetitions in the themes asked by the UPSC or themes chosen by the UPSC. There are repetitions in the framing of questions by UPSC. There is repetition in options by the UPSC. Okay, now I'll present our proof to you. I'll present a set of questions to prove this to you. See, these were the questions asked in 2014, 15 and 16. You can see it on the screen. You can see what? A question regarding massive following regarding Ajanta caves. Okay, you can see a option regarding Varaha Avatar, which was in Udaygiri. Then there is an option regarding Mamalapuram. Now take the questions very next year. You can see in the options Mahabalipuram, then Udaygiri, right? Take the question next in 2016, 2 years after this. Again you can see questions regarding Ajanta Mahabalipuram. So the same options or the same monuments are repeating in year after year. Okay, 3 successive years they included Ajanta, Mahabalipuram and Udaygiri. So there is clearly some repeating patterns, repeating options, repeating framing of questions. By the end of the session, you will have seen that this logic is correct. Okay, and from this logic we can derive a lot of conclusions that can help you in art and culture, right? So what we are saying is increased focus on these areas could get up to 6 marks, help increase your marks by up to 6 marks in art and culture and ancient medieval India. Okay, so that is our second takeaway, right? There are certain repetitions in patterns, questions and choices, right? Now what is the takeaway number 3? Takeaway number 3 is that by our analysis we have found that many confusing questions, so-called confusing questions asked in ancient medieval Indian art and culture have been taken directly from NCERTs. Okay, so a thorough reading of NCERTs can solve many confusing questions asked in ancient medieval Indian art and culture. I'll show it to you again. I'll prove it to you. Every takeaway in this session will be proven by examples afterwards. Here you can see in 2018 there was a question regarding a traveler who had discussed about diamond and diamond mines in India. Okay, the answer was Tavernier. Often many students consider this a tough question at that time, but thing is NCERTs had clearly mentioned that Tavernier was a diamond merchant. Okay, there was an image of this man. Okay, so this is just one example. In multiple times NCERT has said that this guy was a jewel merchant, he was a diamond merchant, his image was given. Okay, so clearly it's an NCERT question. I'll show you another question from 2019. Building Kalyana Mandabas was a notable feature in the construction in the kingdom of. Again, all the ones given were what? South Indian dynasties. Bit confusing, but NCERT has clearly given the answer as Vijayanagara, because in the chapter dealing with Vijayanagara, they have clearly given an image of Kalyana Mandapa and explain this importance in Vijayanagara architecture. So another NCERT question. So what the conclusion is that a thorough reading of NCERTs is absolutely necessary to tackle the questions covered in ancient medieval and art and culture. Okay, many confusing questions are from ancient medieval Indian art and culture. Okay, so those are our 3 general takeaways. What was the first takeaway? That you cannot ignore this subject. You cannot ignore this subject, right? Now what is the second takeaway? There are certain repetitions. There are certain patterns in art and culture which UPSC has used year after year. So that is our takeaway number 2. There are repetitions. Okay, what is our takeaway number 3? That NCERTs are a valuable source of information for art and culture. NCERTs are a very valuable source of information for art and culture. So those 3 are our general takeaways. Okay, those 3 are our general takeaways. I hope that is clear for you before we move into the specific topic wise analysis of this subject. Okay, so we'll move into the topic wise analysis, right? So for topic wise analysis, as I explained earlier, we have divided the topics into 10 themes. Okay, we'll start with Indian philosophies. Okay, then we'll move to Bhakti Sufi movements, personalities in that order, till finally we conclude with architecture and painting. Okay, so that will be our scheme. So we'll straight away start with Indian philosophies. Now what are Indian philosophies? In this topic we have included the questions that UPSC have asked from both orthodox and heterodox philosophies. Okay, orthodox philosophies means your Vedic literature, Vedic religion, then your 6 systems of Indian philosophy, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Samkhya, okay, all those 6 philosophies as well as Vedic religion. And then what is heterodox philosophies? Heterodox philosophies mean we have Buddhism, Jainism, so heterodox philosophies, right? So questions from orthodox and heterodox philosophies of ancient India has been included in this area, right? So we'll observe what the patterns are, right? So that will be our takeaway number 4. Takeaway number 4 will be related to the Indian philosophy section of UPSC. Now this is one of the most favorite areas of UPSC. You might be knowing this, right? This is one of the most favorite areas of UPSC. Now initially UPSC was consistently asking questions from Hindu philosophies. So from 2011 to 2014, you had every year you had one question related to Hindu philosophies in one way or another. Vedic religion, the six systems of Indian philosophy. Okay. From there on, focus has generally shifted to Buddhism and Jainism. So maximum number of questions have come from Buddhism and Jainism, specifically Buddhism, right? So currently the focus is on Buddhism and Jainism, and 9 questions have been from this area from 2013, right? So that is our takeaway number 4. Okay. Now within Buddhism and Jainism, let me tell you, UPSC has generally focused on 3 areas. Okay. What are those 3 areas? One is expectedly the principles of these religions. Principles. Okay. Second area has been, let's say, the life of these personalities. So like say life of Buddha, right? Generally life of these personalities. Let's leave it like that. The third area UPSC has been focusing is on what? Sects. Okay. Sects or various groups within these religions. Okay. For example, Mahayana and Hinayana in Buddhism. So these are the 3 areas in which UPSC has been focusing within Buddhism and Jainism, right? So we'll see how these patterns have developed as questions, right? So we'll start with Hindu philosophies. Okay. From 2011 onwards, there has been, as I said, 4 questions continuously. Okay, every year questions were asked. Okay, so they started with a comparatively tough question regarding dharma and rita. Okay, so dharma is a conception of obligations. Rita is a fundamental moral law. Okay, so rita works through dharma. Okay, that is the concept. Now that was the question, first question from this area in 2011. Now from there they shifted to a much easier question in 2012. You can see religion of Vedic Aryans. What is the basic nature? Okay, which was worship of nature and yajnas, right? So again a tough question, easy question, but from the same area. In 2013, you can see they asked regarding Samkhya school of philosophy. They asked regarding Samkhya school of philosophy, which was one of the 6 Indian systems, right? 6 Indian schools of philosophy, right? Now the question was regarding whether Samkhya accepts the theory of transmigration, which it does. Okay, so that statement is incorrect. Then the question was regarding Samkhya holds that self-knowledge leads to liberation. Again correct. Okay, so answer was 2 only. Right, now what is important is the evolution. You can see they asked from a difficult question in 2011, transitioned into a simpler question from the same topic in 2012. Here we can see that UPSC asked a simple question in 2014. Which one of the following does not form part of 6 systems of Indian philosophy? So Mimamsa Vedanta are part of it, Nyaya and Vaisheshika are part of it, Samkhya Yoga are part of it, right? Lokayata and Kapali are heterodox philosophies. Okay, right? So clearly there are some patterns. Okay, this Indian philosophies were consistently asked in 2011 to 2014. Now from there UPSC has stopped asking these questions. From there UPSC transitioned, as I said, into Buddhism and Jainism. So we will see the questions in Buddhism and Jainism, right? Now starting with the first question in 2011. The Jain philosophy holds that world is created and maintained by, okay, world is created and maintained by universal law. Okay, again 2012 they shifted to a slightly simpler question. What were the commonalities between Buddhism and Jainism? So avoidance of extremities of penance and enjoyment, indifference to the authority of Vedas, denial of efficacy of rituals. Okay, so if you know the basics of Buddhism and Jainism, you will know that these 2 statements are correct. Okay, but Jainism advocates for extreme penance, Buddhism does not. Buddhism follows the Madhyama path, okay, middle path. So that is one of the basic differences. Now, so these 2 questions were asked in 2011 and 2012. Now look at 2013 question. It was regarding Jain doctrines. Okay. Now what was the first thing? The surest way of annihilating karma is to practice penance. See, can you see the link? Can you observe the link here? Because see, in 2012 they asked regarding the differentiating factor was what? The importance of penance in Jainism. In 2013, what they shift, the first statement was regarding again the importance of penance in Jainism, right? If you know that itself, you could cut out option. Okay, again, this what was the second concept that was used? Every object, even the small particle, has a soul. The concept of universal soul that was asked here, which was used here. Okay, so you can see the 2011 and 2012 questions combined form the third question in 2013. Okay, then again they asked the basic concept of nirvana in Buddhism also. Okay, so these were all principles. So that was the initial trend in Buddhism and Jainism. Okay, so he can see here there are certain repetitions. Okay, so the lesson that you must remember is the patterns of questions in the previous years can give birth to the questions the next year. Okay, so it is very useful for us to observe these patterns in all the major areas, right? Now, another question again regarding the life of Buddha and Buddha. Okay, now question is, which of the following kingdoms were associated with the life of Buddha? Okay, which is Koshala and Magadha. Okay, now this question was asked 2 times in UPSC. Okay, perhaps this is one of the only questions in recent years to repeat without a change in word, to repeat the very in consecutive years. Okay, in 2014 and 2015, the same question was asked, right? So basically, probably their intention was to ask questions from life of Buddha and ended up repeating it. Okay, now from 2017 and 2018, questions have shifted to what? Sects in Buddhism and Jainism. As I said earlier, sects in Buddhism and Jainism. So you are asked Swaudhanika Samadhiya sect, Sarvastivadin sect, okay, Sthanakvasi sect. Okay, so Buddhism, sects in Buddhism and Jainism. Swaudhanika and Samadhi are sects of Buddhism. So that was the incorrect statement here. The other statement was correct. Okay. Anyway, so sects in Jainism and Buddhism is the focus. Another area, again, another famous sect in Buddhism and Jainism, Buddhism has been what? Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. So questions have come from the concepts of Hinayana and Mahayana, or perhaps the concept of Bodhisattva and Mahayana. So you can see in 2016, the question was regarding what was Bodhisattva. So as you all know, Bodhisattva is a compassionate one who helps, compassionate being who helps people to attain nirvana, right? So that was the first question in 2016. 2018, again the concept of Bodhisattva comes in UPSC. So the question came as which of the following was a future Bodhisattva. So you have to be thorough with Bodhisattva to identify the answer, right? 2019, they again repeat the question. Okay, they again repeat the concept. Deification of Buddha, treating the path of Bodhisattvas, image worship and rituals. Which of the above are features of Mahayana Buddhism? Same concepts. Same concepts. If you knew the previous year's answers, you could have answered this question that it was part of Mahayana Buddhism. Bodhisattva concept was part of Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, and Bodhisattvas were, the cult of Bodhisattvas was part of image worship and rituals. Okay, so this question was asked in 2019 following the same patterns that were asked in the previous years. Okay, so clearly there are certain patterns to this. UPSC is repeating the same areas year after year. Okay, so now we are going to give you some focus areas for 2020 in this area. Okay, obviously Buddhism and Jainism is a focus area. Within this, UPSC could ask you the basics of Hindu philosophy. They have not asked you for a few years. It may come back inspired from the questions in the previous years. So you have to be thorough with the basics. Only the basics of Vedanta, Mimamsa and other philosophies like yoga, then Vaisheshika, right? So all those philosophies has not been explored properly. Questions may come from basics of those philosophies, right? Then you may be asked questions regarding life of Mahavira and Tirthankaras, or regarding Digambara and Swetambara sects, or the sects in Jainism in general. Okay, so those could be our focus areas for 2020. Remember these focus areas. Remember these focus areas. Okay, prepare for them well. Now, before we move on, before we summarize the takeaways from this section, I want to tell you we have presented to you a diversity of questions from Buddhism and Jainism. But let me tell you, we have found that by our analysis, we have found that all these questions asked in the UPSC preliminary examinations, except one regarding the Sthanakvasi sect in Jainism, except that question, all the questions regarding Buddhism and Jainism could have been answered by a single source. Okay, most of these questions have come from a single source. Okay, has been some questions have been verbally taken from a single source. What is that source? We are going to present it before you. That source is the book known as The Wonder That Was India by A.L. Basham. Okay, on the screen you can see some highlighted parts of the book. We have taken extracts from that book. Okay, you can see the question starting from the universal law question. Okay, universal law. The world according to Jaina is functioning according to a universal law. Another one, souls are the property of stones and rocks. Okay, what is that concept? The concept of universal soul, which was used in a question. Okay, then you can see only by a long course of fasting, self-mortification and meditation can he rid himself of karma. Jainist principle, the importance of penance, right? And it is the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism. So you can see that. Okay, another area you saw the sect questions. Okay, you can see Sautrantrika, Samadhiya. Okay, the questions regarding what? Sects of Buddhism and Jainism. What was that question? Sautrantrika, Samadhiya, Sarvastivadin sects. Okay, so you can see that, right? And this section has been lifted from a section on Sarvastivadin. So all the three sects were mentioned in this book. Okay, then the question regarding Buddha's life, you can see after many years of teaching in the kingdoms of Koshala and Magadha, which was the answer given by UPSC, right? Then the concept of Bodhisattva as the being of what? Being of compassion, right? The question regarding Maitreya, the future Buddha. So all these questions could have been answered by a single source, The Wonder That Was India, which deals with Buddhism and Jainism in very detailed manner. Okay, so that is our takeaway, right? So we want you to focus on certain areas in this section. What are those areas? Basic principles, then sects. Okay, so possible areas of question we are suggesting is the life of Mahavira and Tirthankaras, Digambara and Swedambara sects, and Vedanta Mimamsa. Of course, you have to be thorough with all the areas already asked also. Okay, Mahayana, Hinayana, okay, the basic principles. Be very thorough with these areas. Now, what we are going to do is, in order to help you, since we have found out the source, and we believe that the source mentioned, The Wonder That Was India, is a bit vast for students to depend now. We are going to summarize those questions, summarize the portions given in Wonder That Was India regarding Buddhism and Jainism, which is the useful portion. We are going to summarize it and we are going to present it to you as a study material. Okay, so we will get a study material on Buddhism and Jainism as in The Wonder That Was India. So please subscribe to our Telegram channel for getting that material. Now before we leave, we have mentioned the source, we have mentioned the patterns, everything. Now before we leave, I also want you to just remember that not all questions had to be tackled factually. Okay, some of the questions you can go for patterns in some of the questions. For example, look at this pattern, this question in 2019. Now, it says deification of Buddha, trading of the path of Bodhisattvas, image worship and rituals. Which are the following are features of Mahayana Buddhism? Now, if you know the meaning of deification, what is deification? Deification means making somebody a deity. And what comes with making somebody a deity? You have to worship the deity, and for that you need images of the deity. Okay, so deification of Buddha obviously comes with, if deification of someone happens, it obviously comes with image worship. Now, by that logic, you can use the principle of statement consistency. We had in the first session, we had discussed about this principle known as statement consistency. Sometimes UPSC asks statements which are very much consistent, and if one is true, the other one will also be true, highly probable, right? So if 1 is true, 3 is also true, right? So answer should be D. Answer should be D. Okay. So do not leave a question in art and culture without checking for such patterns and logic. There will be some questions with certain logic to it. Always check for that. Okay. So that is our advices regarding this section. Okay. The takeaways we have presented to you. Please focus on that. We will be giving to as a summary sheet. Focus on that and prepare for this area in this manner. Okay. Now we are going to move into the Bhakti and Sufi movements. Bhakti and Sufi movements. Now, you know what Bhakti movement is, what is Sufi movement is. It is a very sort of vast area. Okay, it starts with the Tamil Bhakti movement, right, and lasts up to the medieval, end of medieval era. Okay, Sufi movement similarly starts with the Islamic establishment of Islamic rule in India, lasts up to what, the end of Mughal rule. Okay, most important areas. Now we are going to check what are the areas in which UPSC has focused. Okay, what are the personalities on which UPSC has focused, and we are going to give some takeaways for that, right? This is also a very important topic, right? Many questions have been asked from this area. Now, what is our takeaway in this area? What is our takeaway? Our takeaway is that the main focus in this area has been on medieval Bhakti movement. The main focus has been on medieval Bhakti movement, right? Medieval Bhakti movement. Now, within Bhakti movement or including the Sufi movement, the questions can come from what? Two patterns. Okay, what? It could be either be about personalities. It could be about personalities. Now, by personalities I mean it could be questions on works of personalities. Okay, works of personalities, right? Or it could be what? It could be questions regarding their timelines or their contemporaries. Okay, their time periods. Okay. Now, also it could be questions could also come from practices, right? Practices and beliefs. For example, practice of Sufis, beliefs of certain sections of Sufism or sections of Bhakti movement. Questions could be like that. So these two are the areas that you have to focus on. If you focus on your personalities, you have to clearly understand their works and time periods. If you are focusing on sects, you have to focus on their practices. Okay, so that is our takeaway. We are going to show it to you. See here, first section, personalities. In 2013, the question was regarding the time period of certain personalities. Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak and Tyagaraja, who of the following were preaching in India while Babur took over, okay, which was in 1526 in the first battle of Panipat. So the question was regarding the time period of these Bhakti saints. Now in 2014, if you had focused on the question in 2013 and understood the personalities here, the 2014 question was regarding Dadu Dayal, which was one of the personalities in 2013, and the question was regarding Bijak, which was a composition of Kabir. Okay, right? And the second statement was regarding Pushti Marg, which is one of the Vaishnava schools or Vaishnava Sampradayas in India. Okay. Now we can see Tyagaraja here, Dadu Dayal here in 2013, Dadu Dayal repeating 2014. Okay. Then again in 2018 you have an entire question dedicated to Tyagaraja and his life. Okay. What are the works of Tyagaraja? Who are the contemporaries of Tyagaraja? Repeating people. Now look at the 2019 question. Even more bigger example of UPSC repeating its patterns. Okay. Now, if you look at it, you can see that the question is regarding what? Kabir, which was the subject of the question in 2014. Now, second statement is regarding Nimbarka, right? On a outer look, you may not see any similarity between the two statements. Now, if you had looked for Pushti Marg in detail, you will understand that Pushti Marg was founded by Vallabhacharya, right? Now, who was Vallabhacharya or what was Pushtimarg? It was among the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas or 4 famous Vaishnava Sampradayas in India, and the founders are Vallabhacharya, Ramanuja, Madhavacharya and Nimbarka. So based on this question, if you had understood and the theme was Vaishnava Sampradayas and checked for it, you would have been able to understand the time period of Nimbarka, who lived in much before Akbar, right? So repeating personalities, Dadu Dayal, Nanak, Tyagaraja, Kabir. Okay, UPSC has some favorite personalities. So those are the questions from personalities. Now we had a couple of questions regarding some sects. Okay, general questions regarding Bhakti or Sufi movements. So first question was regarding the practices of Sufi mystics, meditation, ascetic exercises, recitation of holy songs. All 3 are there. Again, another question was regarding Siddhas and Lingayats. Okay, Tamil region and Kannada region. Now both these questions were taken from NCERTs, okay, or they could have been solved by NCERTs, because NCERTs clearly say that Siddhas believed in a formless ultimate reality. Okay, they mention about, there was also mentions about the practice of Lingayats clearly in NCERT. They also mention about the practice of Sufi saints. Okay, practice of Sufi saints. Even the Kabir question could have been partially answered, because NCERT clearly mentions Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi here and Kabir here, 200 years apart. Okay, so he was not a contemporary. So this question could have been solved partially, right? The question in 2019 could have been solved partially, right? So clearly some of the questions are inspired by NCERTs, and there are certain personalities that UPSC likes to repeat. Now based on this, we have come to our takeaway number 5. What is our takeaway number 5? The questions could be regarding personalities and their works, right? The questions could be regarding practices and their principles. Okay, you have to be very clear about this, okay, along with the timeline of Bhakti and Sufi movements. Okay, now which are the personalities that UPSC has repeatedly asked? Please go through this, because if UPSC repeats this, it may be in the form of a tougher question. So it's a predictable pattern. Do not miss your questions on these personalities. So clearly study the works and lives of Dadu Dayal, Kabir and Tyagaraja. Now UPSC may also ask questions based on people in news. Some of the people in Bhakti and Sufi movements were in news. So we suggest that you go for Guru Nanak and Ravidas. Okay, it was Guru Nanak's birth anniversary, 550th birth anniversary last year. So questions could be asked on that, right? And there was Ravidas Panthi was also in news. So you could have questions on either of these Bhakti saints, and also on Chishti Silsila. This is a very prominent Silsila mentioned in NCERTs, repeatedly mentioned in NCERTs. So you could have questions from Chishti Silsila, especially because the Nizamuddin area was in constantly news. Okay, so you could have questions from Chishti Silsila also. So please check for this. We are going to give you a compilation on Bhakti and Sufi movements based on NCERTs. Okay, so that you don't miss those questions. This compilation will be enough for you to tackle most of the questions. So we will clearly analyze the patterns and give the materials for you, right? So please read those compilations, and this compilation will be available on our Telegram channel, right? So those are our takeaways in Bhakti and Sufi movements. Now we are going to move into the third area regarding personalities. Okay. Now some of the personalities were asked in Bhakti and Sufi movements. Now there are some personalities which do not fit into this pattern. Okay. So you could have personality based questions. Okay, their works. Okay. So we will see the patterns, if there are any patterns in personalities. Now how do you tackle this personalities based question? We have found that most of the personality based questions have been asked from NCERTs. That is the only perhaps the perceptible pattern we have observed. So you can follow NCERTs if possible. Okay, so for the first personality that was asked was in 2013 regarding Huyan Sang, who was one of the travelers. Okay, again, this personality may not be present in the his works may not be present in the new NCRTs, but it is clearly mentioned in the NCRTs of old NCRTs, the R.S. Sharma NCRT of ancient India. It is clearly mentioned regarding the observations of Huyan Sang. Okay, so there were a couple of observations, 3 observations given. You have to identify which one were the correct ones. Okay. Now, right, again, this question could have been in a way solved by logic also, because he says that the roads and river roads were completely immune from robbery. Ancient medieval India, when Huyan Sang came in a time when the state was fragmentary. Okay, there was a lot of chaos in India. Completely immune. Okay, completely. It could be considered what is known as rotten tomato. We have discussed such blanket statements are highly likely to be incorrect, which it was. So answer was 2 and 3. Always go for, especially statement questions, go for logic. Check for logics that could be applied. Now another question regarding Babur. Okay, the arrival of Babur in India led to the introduction of gunpowder, introduction of arch and dome, establishment of Timurid dynasty. So 2 and 3 you might be knowing. Okay, 2 is incorrect. Arch and domes were very much present in Sultanate period. 3 is correct. Okay, you had doubts regarding gunpowder, which is clearly mentioned that it was brought to India in 14th century, much before Babur came here. This was also incorrect. Answer was 3 only. So NCRTs could have been a source. Okay. Then another one. Which of the following had first deciphered the edicts of Emperor Ashoka? Okay. The answer was James Princip, mentioned multiple times in NCRT. Okay. You can see it here. This whole decipherment process is explained in NCRT, and its name is given multiple times. Another question regarding travelers. Okay, travelers. NCRT has given a long list of travelers from medieval India. Please check that. Okay, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. The question was regarding Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. Okay, who is mentioned in NCRTs multiple times. Right. The other travelers, Bernier. Okay. Then Ibn Battuta. There are many travelers that NCRT mentions. Please go through that. You might have repeating questions from that. Okay. Now in 2018 we had questions regarding Tyagaraja. We mentioned that. 2019 we had a question regarding Tansen. Okay. Now we have arranged the Tyagaraja question and Tansen question together so that you can see the patterns. Okay. In 2018 the question was regarding Tyagaraja. You can see Tyagaraja created several new ragas. Okay. Tansen invented many new ragas. Okay. Tyagaraja, these were devotional songs in praise of Krishna. Tansen composed songs on his patrons. Tansen composed Drupads on Hindu gods and goddesses. Very similar question patterns. That is why we have put these questions together. Right? 2018 and 19 similar questions. Now, this question, let me tell you, could have been solved to an extent through logic also. Okay, always check for logic. Okay, use your logic here. Because Tansen is a famous composer from medieval India, you know that. Okay, so any medieval composer, music composer, why is he famous? Because he's a composer. Okay, now any person like that should have composed songs on his patrons. This was a medieval India. He was a courtier. He should have composed songs on Akbar and other courtiers. Okay, then he, as a composer of Hindustani music, as a very big figure in Hindustani music, he must have composed ragas. Okay, he must have composed Drupads. Highly likely to be correct. Okay, highly likely to be correct. So only statement that could be incorrect was Emperor Akbar. Logic. Okay, use your logic. Right? Do not leave a question just because you have not read about Tansen. If you knew the basic information of that Tansen, that he was a famous composer in Hindustani music, you could have gone for a very good guess in this question. Always use your logic. Okay. Now, so we are saying refer to new NCRTs and various personalities. Okay. Right. What are the areas possible follow-up questions from this? You could have questions on Travelers of Medieval India. Okay, as I said, NCERT has a very prominent chapter on Travelers of Medieval India. Do focus on that, right? You could have questions on Drupad and Hindustani traditions based on the Tansen question. UPSC may branch off into that area. Please go through that. Okay, then you could have some questions on musical composers, which we will provide you as part of iLearn compilation on Bhakti movement. So Bhakti musicians will be part of our compilation on Bhakti movement. Go through that. Okay. For other areas, NCERTs could be a good source. Okay. By NCERTs we mean, I have already given, you would have seen it in slides. There are a series known as Upper Pass, class 6 and 7 is relevant for what? 6 and 7 is relevant for ancient medieval India, Our Pass 1 and 2. Okay. Then there is another textbook known as Themes in Indian History. This is a textbook from class 12. Okay. So Themes in Indian History, there are multiple parts to it. You have to download that book. You can read that. Okay. So this could be a good source of information for personalities asked in UPSC questions. That is our takeaway number 6. Takeaway number 6 is you have to read NCERTs, you have to focus on travelers, you can focus on Drupad and Hindustani traditions, you can focus on musical composers. These are the most important areas asked by the UPSC or on which UPSC can ask follow-up questions. Right? Now we will move to the next section, terminologies. Terminologies. So this is one of the areas which has given a lot of bad name to the entire area known as art and culture and ancient medieval India. This is one of the feared areas. So we will see what the general takeaways in this area are. So takeaway number 7 related to terminologies. Our takeaway is that there are no certain patterns to the questions asked till now in this area. Okay, we want to make it clear to you. 6 questions have been asked which can fit into this terminology pattern. There are some other areas, some terminologies related to architecture, but they fit a certain pattern. But the terminologies asked in this area do not fit to any pattern. And we'll see what those questions are. What are the questions? There was a question on Panchayat and style of architecture, which is a style of temple construction. There was a question on Mahatara and Pattakila. Okay. Then there were questions on, in 2016 there were 4 questions. Okay. One question was regarding terminologies mainly from South India. Erupatti was a land revenue which was set apart for tanks. Okay. Taniyur was a Chola revenue term. Then Ghatika was a college attached to the temple. Okay. Then you had question on Magadha, who was a chronicler of epic tales. You had Aragata, which was a water wheel. Then you had Banjaras, right, who were traders. Now, couple of these questions, Banjaras and Panchayatan, could have been solved by NCERTs. The rest of the questions cannot be solved by NCERTs. Okay. So our general assumption is that these terminologies do not seem to follow a pattern as of yet. So we are giving you a study material to prepare you for any follow-up questions. We cannot invest too much into this area, but you can refer to study material to understand the basic terminologies asked in NCERTs. There is a set of terminologies in NCERTs. You can read that. Okay. Also, some other important areas like Buddhism and Jainism are given. So we can focus on those areas only. That is the only feasible strategy here. Okay. And please do not fear art and culture just because UPSC has asked such questions. Remember that all the 4 questions came in 2016. So you can consider that it was a one-off pattern. Most of the questions, terminologies asked in the other years were tackleable by your common books. Right? So 2016 can be considered as a one-off pattern which may not repeat for many years now. Okay. Right? So that is our takeaway. We'll give you a study material which will be uploaded on the Telegram channel. There will be a study material on terminology in ancient India. There will be another study material on terminology in medieval India. Okay, those would have been uploaded. So please go to the Telegram channel and download them. Right? So we'll just conclude our takeaways now. Right? Takeaway 4, 5, 6 and 7. Okay, so we started with Indian philosophies. Okay, we gave you certain insights into it. The questions were from A.L. Basham, questions were regarding various aspects of Buddhism and Jainism. Okay, then we ventured into what? Bhakti and Sufi movements. Okay, we ventured into Bhakti and Sufi movements. So those were our second area of takeaways. Okay, remember we suggested you a certain heavyweight personalities: Kabir, Tyagaraja, Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak. Please follow up on that. Okay, right? So those were first two major areas. Okay, now takeaway number 6 was related to personalities. Takeaway number 6 was related to personalities. Okay, we said that most of these personalities were from NCRTs, and we said we point out certain areas of personalities, for example, travelers, composers. Okay, now takeaway number 7 was related to terminologies. As we accepted, this area was tough. Okay, we will give you a material which will be a compilation of NCRTs plus some extra terminologies. It will be very comprehensive but not too tough, not too long. Okay, essential list. So please download that from our group. Right? So those are our first 4 takeaways. Now we'll move into the another area known as political, economic and social life. Okay, political, economic and social life. Now the questions given in this section are from diverse areas. Okay, diverse areas of Indian history, ancient as well as medieval India. Okay, these questions may seem a bit from different areas. Okay, but let me tell you, most of the questions here can be solved by logic and basic understanding of historic periods in Indian history. Logic and basic understanding. Now, before we move into this section, I just want to give you some of the most important areas in each phase of Indian history. This will suffice as a revision area for you. Okay, before you conclude your preparations, always make sure that you have explored these dimensions of each phase of Indian history. Okay, so what are the dimensions? Let me give you. For example, let me give you Indus Valley civilization. What are the most exceptional dimensions of Indus Valley civilization? Okay, one is its agriculture backbone, okay, which was very superior to other civilizations of this period. Their cultivation methods, the cultivation of cotton, wheat. Okay, then the urban nature of Indus Valley. So we have the towns, okay, the town planning, all those aspects. Okay, then the secular nature of Indus Valley. Okay, there are no large temples, even no large palaces. Okay, so these are the basic areas. Okay, then you can also, in urban area we can also say crafts. Okay, so these are the basic dimensions of Indus Valley that you must be very clearly, thoroughly knowing, because these are the evidences, or these are the most explored areas of Indus Valley, and we have clear information on this area. So for example, polity of Indus Valley, we don't know much about it. Scripts of Indus Valley, language of Indus Valley, we don't know much about it. So UPSC may only ask very basic questions, no detailed questions from this. But in contrast, agriculture, urban nature, town planning, the secular nature, crafts, we have detailed archaeological evidences. So in these areas you must be very thorough, right? Now let's focus on the next area, which is the Rig Vedic and later Vedic period, or Vedic periods, right? And what are the aspects of it? The pastoral and rural aspects of it. Okay, we have clear evidences of pastoral and rural aspects of dimensions of Vedic culture. Okay, so you must be very thorough with those aspects. For example, how the land was owned. There was no clear private ownership of land. Then how cow became a very important element in Vedic culture. Okay, how it manifested in the use of cow in various words in Vedic culture. All those aspects. Then you must be knowing the spiritual aspects of Vedic culture. Spiritual aspects. How spiritual aspects of manifested through for the Vedic corpus. So you must be knowing the basics of Vedic corpus very clearly. What are the texts? There are 4 Samhitas. Okay, there is Upanishads, there is Aranyakas, there is Brahmanas. What are each of these? What are the basic content of each of these? You must be very clear. Okay, then regarding society, we have clear information on society from the literary evidences. So I would say that the social transformation of Rig Veda and later Vedic period, how society transformed, how the status of women changed, how the status of Brahmins and Brahmin class changed, how the status of the 3 other Varnas changed. Okay, you must be knowing clearly how the social transformation happened. Then how the polity of Rig Veda worked. Rig Veda, as you know, was a tribal polity. Why was it called as a tribal polity? Okay, what are the elements that made it tribal polity? You had a power Raja who was controlled by certain councils. What are those councils? So you must be clearly identifying the polity, the social transformation, the spiritual aspects, and the pastoral and rural aspects of Vedic culture. These are the areas from which questions can be asked, right? Then we'll move to the next, which is the pre-Mauryan period. Pre-Mauryan period. So what are the most important aspects of pre-Mauryan period? How the urbanization manifested. As you know, this is the second phase of urbanization in India. So how the urbanization manifested in the form of guilds, coins, new coins, punch-marked coins. Okay. Then it was the formation period of state formation. Okay. How this manifested. You must be clearly knowing what the concepts of Mahajanapadas, okay, which were the first territorial states to form in Indian history. So you had to know Mahajanapadas. Then within Mahajanapada there were diversities. For example, you need to know the oligarchies. Which were the oligarchies? You needed to know the monarchies. Basic information. You must be very clear about how the state formation worked, right? Then you need to know the philosophies of this period. So this was a period of philosophers. Okay, pre-Mauryan period was a period of philosophers. So there were a lot of philosophers. So we have already discussed Buddhism and Jainism, right? Then there was Charvakas and Ajivikas and other philosophers. So you must be very thorough with that. Okay, most important dimensions. Okay, most important dimensions. Then coming to Mauryan period, which is the most important dimension. In case of Mauryan period, you have 2 areas. One is the period of the centralized state. Okay, the most remarkable phase of Mauryan period is the centralized state structure. You must be very clear about the state structure of Mauryas, how the various aspects like the bureaucracy worked, okay, then how centralization worked, how taxation worked, okay, all those aspects. That is the first aspect. Then you must be very clear about the second most important dimension of Mauryan period was the ideology of Ashoka, Dhamma. That will include all the inscriptions, okay, all the architectural, right, all those aspects of Dhamma, okay, so inscription based evidences. So these 2 are the most important dimensions, okay. And also I want to tell you, in case of the imperial dynasties means the dynasties that have conquered large parts of India. For example, Mauryas, the Guptas, then we have the sultanates under Khaljis and Tughlaqs, not the other ones, Khaljis and Tughlaqs. Then we have the Mughals. Okay. In case of these dynasties, you should be very clear about their administrative structure, because UPSC may ask questions based on that. Okay, so in case of imperial dynasties, you must be very clear about what the state structure. You may not, you do not need the state structure of other areas. For example, you don't need to know the state structure of Indo-Greeks and Shatavahanas, smaller dynasties. But in case of imperial dynasties, also Cholas, okay, in case of imperial dynasties, you must be very clear, right? That is what I want to tell you. Then, what are the most important aspects of post-Mauryan period? Post-Mauryan period, what are essential dimensions that you must know? The most important dimension is trade, urbanization in post-Mauryan period. So you must know the most important ports of this period. Okay. Trade was the most important dimension. Also, the coins evolution. Okay, the first gold coins came. The first coins with the inscription of rulers and dates and names of rulers came. Okay, images of rulers. So evolution of coins, ports, then trade guilds. There were multiple trade guilds, Srenis, Nigamas. Okay, all those terminologies you must be very clear, right? So that is the important dimension. Now there are many states. It was a period of state fragmentation. If Mauryan period was that of state centralization, this was a period of state fragmentation. You don't need the details of each of these states, only basic information. Okay, how the fragmentation worked. Okay, right? How there were multiple dynasties. Okay, if there were conflicts, what were they? Right? So that is the dimension that you must know. Okay. Then most important dimension of this period, of post-Mauryan period, that you must know is this was a period of schisms. Schisms or breaking up of religions. Okay, this was a period of breaking up. So you had Mahayana and Hinayana. So the new Mahayana sect. You had the evolution of Digambara and Svedambara. Okay, so all those aspects of religious schisms you must be very clear. Most important dimension, what happened. Okay, clear, right? So these are the most important aspects of this period, post-Mauryan period. Also you must be aware of South Indian Sangam. Okay, how the tribal polity of Sangam worked. Okay, you must be very clear, right? So those are the most important dimensions. Then you will have the Guptas. Again, imperial dynasty. Guptas are an imperial dynasty. So should be clear with the state structure. Okay, compared to Mauryas, this was a more feudal state structure, more decentralized state structure. So how that worked out, what was the elements of Guptan state, you must be very clear, right? Then another area, this was a period of golden age. It was known as a golden age. So because why is it known as golden age? It was a period of achievements in literature and science. So you must be very clear on that, right? Clear? Then you must also know what? You must also know the religious changes during Gupta period. What were the religious changes during Gupta period? Because this was a period when a lot of isms, Hinduism was what? Hinduism was consolidated. Okay, many religions like Buddhism began to fade away in the subcontinent, right? So how that worked out? What are the changes in Hinduism, right? How the Purana compilation happened. So what are the basic changes? Okay, you must be very clear. So these areas are the most important dimensions of Gupta period, right? Now we'll move to post-Guptan period or early medieval period. Early medieval period, what is the most important dimension? Was the feudalization of North India, especially North India. So how the feudalization aspect, you must be very clear on how the feudal state structure worked. Okay, how land grants, what are the different dimensions of land grants. Okay, how the state got decentralized through land grants. You must be very clear. You can ask questions from that because this is a very important characteristic of this period. Because it was not an imperial period, you don't need the administrative details of dynasties. Okay. Then what were the social changes of this period? It was a period of social transformation. Okay, because you have many new practices, right? The establishment of untouchability, firm establishment, practices like sati. So what are the social changes? Then another aspect, there was a imperial phase in this period. Okay, early medieval represented by the Cholas. Okay, you must be very clear on the administrative structures and changes in Cholas and the general achievements in South India. This was the period of golden age of South India. So what are the achievements of Pallavas, Chalukyas? Those are the most important dimensions of early medieval period, right? Now we will move to Sultanate and Mughals. Similar, we will compare them together. Okay, in case of Sultanate, I am not touching the art and architecture part here because you will be studying that definitely in the other portions, but I am dealing with the administrative, social, such dimensions. What are the most important dimensions from social areas, economic areas, political areas? So in case of Sultanate, you should be very clear about the Iqta system, which was essential part of Sultanate state structure. Similarly, you must know how Mansabdari, Jagirdari worked, okay, in Mughal state. Then you must be knowing the imperial structure under Khaljis and Tughlaqs. Similarly, under Great Mughals, how the administrative system worked under Akbar. Okay, what are the important officers? Similarly, under Khaljis, under Tughlaqs, you must be very clear on that. Then this was a period of religious flux. Then Sultanate was a period of religious flux. What was the dimensions of religious flux? You can see Bhakti and Sufi movements. Okay, so those are the most important dimensions of Sultanate period, right? So you don't have some equivalence there. Mughal religion was basically a continuation of that period, so you don't know that, but you must very clearly know the various theories of kingship of Mughals, which is explored in detail, including the merging of Indian, Mongol and Turkish principles, okay, kingship, religious secularization or religious tolerance, all those dimensions you must be very clear. Okay, these are the most important dimensions. Apart from this, there is another important dynasty, we will discuss that, which is Vijayanagar, right? That is also very important. Okay, we have a section dedicated to Vijayanagar, so we will discuss it there, right? So in case of these dynasties, you must be very clear about the dimensions that I mentioned. In case of time periods that I mentioned, you must be very clear about these dimensions. Do not miss these dimensions. Okay, please note them down, analyze them in detail. Okay, you will be able to analyze and answer most of the questions. Okay, so we'll move on. You can see, so next portion will be questions from economics and society. Okay, most of the questions, as I said, can be solved by logic and basic knowledge of facts. Okay, we'll see. So regarding Indus Valley civilization, most of the questions regarding Indus Valley civilization has been regarding their knowledge, their social structure. Okay, you can see it was predominantly a secular civilization. Again, one of the great principles. Same theme was repeated here. They possess great palace and temples. Okay, this was correct, this was wrong, right? Same condition. Then another aspect was there, agriculture knowledge, cotton, whether cotton was used. Okay, again, whether they worship both male and female deities. You know that they worship Mother Goddess as well as Pashupati Shiva. So that is correct. Then third statement was regarding whether they knew horse-drawn chariots. Right? So you know that horses came here with the Aryan migrations. Okay, so that is incorrect. So answer should be 2 only. Same things repeating. Okay. Again, another question. You can see the theme of horse is repeating here. Question was regarding Rigvedic Aryans and Indus Valley. So, in Rigvedic Aryans domesticated the horse, whereas there is no evidence of Indus Valley people having been aware of this animal. Now, this was a controversial statement, but UPSC had given a hint earlier that Indus Valley did not have a horse. Okay, that is the view of UPSC. So, clearly here this statement was correct. Okay. Then another important statement, knowledge of Indus Valley regarding metals. Okay, you knew that Indus Valley did not have much knowledge about iron. Okay, but they did know about gold. Okay, silver. They did work gold ornaments. The statement was Rigvedic Aryans knew gold, silver, and copper, where Indus Valley knew only copper and iron. Is that possible? That itself is a rotten tomato. Only copper and iron. They must be knowing other metals also. Okay, gold, very common. Okay, so that is incorrect. Right, solving that itself, you can get the answer. Right. Then first statement was correct. Right. So you had answer 1 and 3. Okay. Similar themes. Okay. Basic logic. You don't need to worry about these questions. You already probably have the information required. Patiently approach these questions. Then question was regarding Sreni. Clearly mentioned in NCERTs. What was Sreni? Srenis are trade guilds. Again, use your logic. Okay, trade guilds means trading organizations. They collected, work together to get produce, get raw materials. That is how every trading guild would work. Okay, so look at the statements. Which of the following statements are correct? The wages, rules of work, and standards and prices. Now this is a very general statement. This has to be correct because every trading organization should have done that at some point. So you have to pinpoint these options, 3 options. Okay. Now look at this statement. Every guild was registered with the central authority. Do you think in ancient India every guild would have been registered with the central authority? That would have been impossible. Okay. So that is incorrect, especially with lot of fragmentary states. It was not possible for every guild to be registered. Logically you can think that itself every is a rotten tomato, as we mentioned, rotten tomatoes, words that are put to make sure that the statements are incorrect. So 1 is incorrect, 2 is correct. Okay, guild had judicial powers, probably correct. So 1 is incorrect, then 2 is correct. So there is only one option, C. You don't need to know about the third statement. Anyway, this is also given in NCERT that they regulated production, marketed the finished product. NCERT source. Right? Again, another question. India maintained its early contacts and trade links with Southeast Asia across Bay of Bengal. Okay. Which of the following are convincing explanations for this? Now look at these statements. As compared to other countries, India had a better shipbuilding technology. The rulers of South India always patronized traders, Brahmin priests and Buddhist monks. Monsoon winds across the Bay of Bengal facilitated sea voyages. Now, do you think first statement is a convincing statement? No, this is a very relative statement. How do you say that India had a better shipbuilding technology? Many other civilizations have shipbuilding. Is there any convincing parameters for that? No, because many Chinese traded, many countries in the Southeast Asia traded, so they all had their ships. Okay, Arabs traded. So this cannot be said for certain. Okay. Now another statement: the rulers of South India always patronized traders, Brahmin priests, and Buddhist monks. Always, blanket statement. You cannot always say that. Okay, possibly incorrect. Blanket statements are likely to be highly chances to be incorrect, especially from ancient India. Okay, but look at this: monsoon winds across Bay of Bengal facilitated sea voyages. This has to be correct because there are winds across Bay of Bengal. They could be used by traders, so they facilitated sea voyages. That is very clear. Okay, all the trade in Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal has to use monsoon winds. All right, so that is correct statement. Again, logic. So please use, be patient with these questions and use your logic. Another question. This was a question from 2019 with reference to forced labor in India during the Gupta period. Which one of the following statements is correct? Okay. Now, there is mention of Vetti or tax known as Vetti by Cholas in NCERT. If you had compared Vetti with Vishti, you would have known that the answer is it was considered a source of income. or you could have applied some logic. Okay, for example, it was totally absent in Madhya Pradesh. That is highly incorrect, highly likely to be incorrect. Totally absent in ancient India in such a large area, highly likely to be incorrect. Forced labor was entitled to weekly wages. Do you think as a right in a society like ancient India, where legal codes were not so favorable to laborers, that would have happened? No, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. 95% of times it would be incorrect. So this has to be incorrect. So that limits you to 2 options. Okay, right? Now how do you say that A is wrong? Because if the state extracts a forced labor, it should be considered income. That is a very general statement. So between these 2 statements, A cannot, it is very difficult to prove A as incorrect. So that has to be the probable answer. Okay, right? Even if you don't think like that, you can still reach up to 50-50 based on basic logic. B and C are likely to be incorrect. Okay. Next question. With reference to Indian history, which of the following are elements of feudal system? Now, what is the basic of feudal system? I said in the post-Guptan period, the most important character of the society is feudalization. What is feudalization? Decentralization of power to landholders. There were land grants, they got the power, landholders got the power, and the central authority of king weakened. Okay, that is the basic of feudalization, right? Look at this question. A strong centralized political authority. That is incorrect. Okay, very weak provincial authority. No, that is the basic of feudal system. That provincial authorities, landholders were the stronger class. The political authority of center got weakened. Then emergence of administrative structure based on land. The most important aspect of feudalization. So 1 is incorrect, 2 is correct. So the only possible answer is B. Right? Again, logic. Okay. Now, another question. Iqta system regarding the Sultanate administration. This was from last year. Okay, the Iqta system of sultans was a ancient Indian institution. Was it an ancient Indian institution? The basic thing is Iqta was introduced by Delhi Sultanate. Turkish system. It was introduced by Delhi Sultanate. So this is incorrect. So you could have ruled out 2 options. So 1 and 3 only. Okay. Revenue administration Delhi Sultanate. The person in charge of revenue collection known as Amil. This is correct. Okay. This is the answer. Okay. Even if you didn't know that, you had to know that Mir Bakshi, office of Mir Bakshi. Mir Bakshi is one of the most important offices in Mughal period. He handled the military affairs. So that was incorrect. Okay, you need to know the state structure of Mughals. Again, as I mentioned, Mughal state structure, imperial dynasties, Khaljis. You have to be very clear about state structure. Mughals, Khaljis, Tughlaqs, Guptas, Mauryas, imperial dynasties. Right? So 1 is correct. Again, there was a question on Vijayanagar, Krishnadevaraya. Okay, we'll discuss this question in the next section. Then, with reference to Mughal India, what are the differences between Jagirdar and Zamindar? Basic question. What is Jagirdar? Jagirdari system gave what? Jagirs to Mansabdars or officials. Okay, and they had the right to take revenue from there. Okay, but they did not have to administer there. They were not even posted in their Jagirs. They were serving in, say, Afghanistan. Their Jagir was in Bihar. Basic thing, and it was transferable. The only right they had was, as long as they had that Jagir, they could take the revenue from there. Basic. Okay, so the first statement, Jagirdars were holders of land assignments in lieu of judicial and police duties. Incorrect. Because basic thing, Jagirdari system, no duties, only revenue collection rights. Land assignments to Jagirdars were hereditary. No. Incorrect, because they could be transferred. Okay, no idea. Only if you are a state official, you will be given a Jagir, and that depends on the emperor itself. Okay, so incorrect. So first and both statements are incorrect. Okay. So what are the takeaways that we can take from takeaway number 8? Okay, that you must be very clear on the aspects of major periods, imperial dynasties, Mauryans, Gupta, Sultanate and Mughal periods. Okay, you may have some follow-up questions. There has been 2 questions from Iqta system as well as Jagirdari system in 2019. So please go through similar systems like Amaranayaka system. Also, you may have further questions from Sultanate and Mughal administration. Be very thorough with these aspects. Very important. 2019 two questions were asked. Highly likely you will have continuation of that series. Okay. So that is our takeaway number 8, that you must be very clear about administrative aspects of certain phase of Indian history. Okay. Right. Now we'll move to takeaway number 9. Takeaway number 9 regarding what? The Vijayanagar kingdom. Regarding the Vijayanagar kingdom. Now you know that medieval India has so many different dynasties. You had Bahmanid kingdoms, you had Sultanates, you had what? Mughals, then you had early dynasties. But UPSC has been consistently asking questions from one of these dynasties, and that is Vijayanagar Empire. Okay, 4 questions have been asked in recent years regarding Vijayanagar Empire. It may pertain to politics, art, architecture, etc. There is no certain pattern, but the questions will come from and will continue to come from Vijayanagar. That is to be expected. It is one of the favorite areas of UPSC. Please focus on that. In 2015, the question was regarding who of the following founded a new city on the bank of River Krishna. You need to know 2 things, that Harihara I was the founder, right? Founder of Harihara, and Bukka was the founders of Vijayanagar Empire. So you need to know that, and also you need to know that what? Vijayanagar city or Hampi city was on the banks of Tungabhadra, which is a tributary of river Krishna, right? So that was the basis of question in 2015. Now 2019, where did they ask Hampi, where they asked Vijayanagar? In a match the following question, famous place and river. And what did you have to know? Hampi was on the banks of, not Malprabha, but on the banks of Tungabhadra. So if you knew that, you could have cut 3 options and got straight away to the answer. You did not know Pandarpur, you didn't need to know Tiruchirappalli. Simple question based on the patterns. Now another question 2016 was regarding the reforms of Krishnadevaraya. Okay. What was the statements? Tax rate on land was fixed depending on quality of land. Private owners of workshops paid an industries tax. Now this was medieval India. Okay, everything that was possibly taxed could have been taxed. Okay, everything would have taxed, right? So workshops, traders, agriculturists, everyone was taxed. So this statement is highly unlikely to be what? Incorrect. 90% of times this is likely to be correct, unless if there was such a big exception for all workshops, we would have studied that. That would have been a very important important reform, like Alauddin Khilji's market reforms. So when such general statements are asked, you either trust your learning. If you have such a reform was there, such a big reform was there, you would have known it. So focus on the 90% of time this will be right. Okay. The other one, tax rate on land was fixed on depending on quality of land. Throughout the empire, Mughal period, the best of Sultanate period, for example Khaljis, tax rate would have depended on quality of land, because every land revenue was the major source of taxation, and more fertile lands had to be taxed more to increase the revenue. Less fertile had to be taxed less, so that cultivation had to continue. So clearly that is logic. Okay, for successful empires this would have necessary. Definitely Krishnadevaraya was one of the most successful empires. Such a reform would have been part of his empire. Logic, right? Again, so this should be correct. Okay. Again, we have discussed this Kalyana Mandapa question. Another question 2019. There were 2 questions in Vijayanagar from 2019, right? So we are saying a clear understanding of Vijayanagar Empire is necessary. You need to know Amaranayaka system, the structures in the city of Hampi, cultural achievements in the empire, literature. These dimensions need to be clearly studied, right? There is an NCERT chapter on Vijayanagar in themes of Indian history. Please go through that. Okay. So takeaway number 8 was regarding economic and social life. We explored the most important dimensions of various phases of Indian history, and also takeaway number 9 is regarding Vijayanagar. Okay, so please follow the recommendations. Now we are going to focus on another area entirely, handicrafts. Okay, handicrafts. Now certain questions have been asked from handicrafts. We are going to straight away go into the questions. Okay, before we go into the takeaway. You can see the 4 questions. Bhadrachalam, Chandipuram. Just focus on the options here. We are going to focus on the options only. Bhadrachalam, Chanderi, Kanjipuram, Karnal. Banaras, Rajasthani, Dal, Batti, Churma, Tirupati, Laddu. Kalamkari painting. Pudukkali shows, Sujani embroidery, Uppada Jamdani sarees. What is the common thread here? What is the common thread? Common thread is that, can you guess it? These are all related to GI tags in India, especially in the areas of fabrics. Okay, most of the handicrafts questions have come from GI tags, especially in the area of fabrics. So the only thing we have is to refer GI tags. Okay, we will give you a value addition material. Okay, please go through that, especially in the area of fabrics. Okay, you will certainly have questions in the coming years related to these areas. Another area of UPSC has been religious sites. Okay, religious sites. Okay, now you might have observed this question. Basically, in this type of questions, what is asked is there will be a religious site. You will be asked to match it or identify it with a certain region. Okay, so the dominant team is to identify the regions, right? Location based question, you can say. So it started in 2014 by asking certain Buddhist monasteries. Okay, you don't need to know this. Anyway, in 2015 they asked regarding Sri Shailam, Omkareshwar and Pushkar. 2016 another set. 2017 they again asked, but with a repetition in options, Omkareshwar. Okay, the question was regarding sun temples. Okay, you can see the questions on the screen. Right, now is this question solvable? Some of the questions are solvable by basic information. For example, if you knew Pushkar was in Rajasthan, okay, the main mountain range in Rajasthan would be Aravallis, okay, and Pushkar is on the base of Aravallis. If you knew that Mahadia Hills was not part of Rajasthan, you could have solved this question. Okay, cut all the 3 options. The only feasible option here is one only. Another question that can be solved by logic here. You can see places and region. Don't look at the other options. Look at the option here. Nasik in Maharashtra. You know Nasik is in Maharashtra and it was matched with Malwa. If you know basic information, Malwa is a famous place. Malwa is generally from Gujarat and upwards, okay, towards the north. So Maharashtra cannot be part of Malwa Plateau. Okay, so Nasik was not part of Malwa. So if you knew that, you could have solved this information possibly, right? Another question here, Omkareshwar, right? If you knew Omkar was associated with Shiva, okay, Omkareshwar was Shiva. If you are familiar with Hindu mythology, you could have cut 3 options and got the option straight away. That's right. Now, we don't suggest that you go after every religious site. It is very difficult for us to prepare for this question. So, depend on your logic only and go through the options given in previous years. These questions are tough in facts. So, do not go after. We cannot learn every religious site in India. So, only focus on the most important ones and focus on the options already given. Right? And also, because Sun Temple question were asked, we suggest you go through the details of Konark and Modhera Sun Temples. Konark and Modhera Sun Temples. Okay. So that is our takeaway number 11. Right. Now we'll move to performing arts and festivals. Performing arts and festivals. By performing arts we mean classical dances, dramas, right? All those things. Now, what is our takeaway in this area? We are saying that initially the focus of UPSC was mostly on classical dances. Now the focus is on folk arts, okay, folk festivals or folk dances. Okay, earlier the focus was on classical dances, right? You can see the question here. Okay, the first 3 years, 2012, 13, 14, Kuchipudi, Bharatanatyam, then Tribanga, which is part of Odissi. Okay, then Satriya. So all the main classical dances. Okay, main classical dances. Then you can see from there on it has been slightly shifted to focus on folk, okay, or regional traditions of dances. For example, Kalripayattu, Manganyas. Okay, Kalripayattu was a martial art in South India. Then Manganyas was a musical tradition in Northwest India. Then you had what? Another pair of match the following pairs. Okay, another one, festivals and communities. Again, this is also a region based question. You can, because this question would have been solved by regions. Okay, then another question from dances of Northeast. Okay, Tangta is from Manipur. This was the key. Now these are many of these questions are not extremely tough because you were familiar with Chapcharkut, Komjam Parva, Garba, Mohiniyattam, Yakshagana, okay, Kalripayattu. Some of them would have been difficult to solve because, for example, Chaliha, Sahib and Nandaraj, these are not easy to get. Right. Now, there was also a question on Manipuri Sankirtana, which was part of intangible cultural heritage. UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage. Now here we are suggesting that you focus on folk dances, and when you focus on their regions, okay, that is likely to be the pattern of the questions, and also especially focus on the dances from Northeast and South who has a very huge majority, okay, not slight, huge majority. You can see that North and Northwest dominates, all the three here, they are all part of extreme areas of India. See, Manganyas, Northwest, Kalripayattu, South India. So please focus on these areas, folk arts from these areas. Then we will provide you a material on folk arts. Okay. Also be thorough with the basic features of classical dances. Basic features, by this we mean founders or personalities. What are the themes? Most essential aspects only of the performance. Essential aspects of performance. For example, what are the various musical instruments used? Okay, only that aspects. Okay, what are the themes used? What are the general way of delivery? Whether dialogues are used? Only those aspects. You don't need to learn in detail about every step in this dances. Basic things only. Most important features only. Those features of classical dances have to be studied. In case of folk arts, focus on the region more. Focus on the region more. That is the most important aspect. Okay, so that is our takeaway number 12. Alright. Now finally we come to takeaway number 13, which will be from architecture and painting. Okay, just very important area, architecture and painting. Just like the initial areas that we talked about, very important area. Many questions have been asked. Now we are saying the most favorite areas of UPSC has been rock cut and temple architecture. Rock cut and temple architecture. Okay. Now again, this is an area where NCERTs have come to into play multiple times. Okay, around 7 out of 8 questions in architecture and 3 out of 4 questions in paintings could have been mostly directly or sometimes indirectly solved by NCERTs. So NCERTs are very important, and most of these questions are not just solved by NCERTs, they could have been solved by NCERT figures. Many of them are given directly as figures in NCERT. We'll see that. Okay, so we are saying that is our takeaway. Okay, right. So we'll move to architectural questions. Right. So what are the questions? The first one was, what are the Nagara, Dravida and Vesra? Directly given in NCERTs. Okay. The most important text here in NCERTs, there is an NCERT from class 11 known as an Introduction to Indian Art. Right. So most of the questions are from there. So Nagara, Dravida and Vesra are what? The 3 main styles of Indian temple architecture, clearly given in NCERT. Another question, what are Chaityas? What are Viharas? Okay, Chaitya is a place of worship, Vihara is a dwelling place. Again given in NCERT. Okay, right? Permanent residence for monks known as Viharas. Okay, shrines known as Chaityas, clearly given in NCERTs. Even figures are given, Chaitya cave, Kanheri. Okay, another question was from Lord Buddha's images in Ajanta. Okay, there was a hand gesture called Bhumi Sparsha Mudra. Okay, now this term is not given in NCERT, but while discussing the interaction between Mara and Buddha in NCERT, there is a clear mention that Buddha is calling on earth as a witness to his generosity. Okay, as a witness to his generosity. So clearly given in NCERT under Mara Vijaya. Okay, there is a symbol of right hand indicating towards earth as a witness of generosity. Another question, 2013, Indian rocket architecture. What are the terms asked? Caves at Badami. Barabar rocket caves were originally made for Rajiv Gas by Emperor Chandragupta Maurya. Ellora caves were made for different faiths. The answer is, this is incorrect. It was made by Ashoka. Clearly given in NCERT, donated by Ashoka. Right? So that means you could have, again, caves at Badami are the oldest rocket caves? No, because there is Barabar caves. That is also incorrect. So Barabar caves are Mauryan caves, clearly given in NCERT again. Right? Then we discuss these areas. Okay, Ajanta, Mahabalipuram, heavyweight areas. Okay, there have been multiple questions on Ajanta. We already saw that. Okay, the Mara Vijaya, Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, multiple times in Ajanta. Okay, again we can see that there were painting questions from Ajanta. Right? Then Mahabalipuram, then Udayagiri. Right? Mount Abu, Udayagiri, Mahabalipuram. The rock elephant at Dhauli. Now what is common to all these? These are NCERT figures. Okay, you can see the rock cut relief at Mahabalipuram or Arjuna's penance. Figure is given in NCERT. Then it says that NCERT say that Mount Abu was what? Famous for Jain sculptures and Jain temple. There is also another image of Dilwara temple. Okay, so clearly all these questions could have been solved using what? Solved using NCERTs alone. Okay, right? And there are multiple repeating themes. And what is the common theme in all these? That most of these questions are from rocket architecture, which is one of the favorite areas of UPSC. Now, recently there has been couple of questions from Islamic architecture also. So it's in 2014 there was a question regarding Ibadat Khana. Again, this question was also directly taken from NCERTs. Okay, there are multiple figures in pictures in NCERT regarding Akbar's discussion with religious scholars in Ibadat Khana. Another question was regarding in 2018 regarding Fatehpur Sikri. Now this was a question that was based on Hindu articles. Okay, so you cannot predict such questions, right? It also used Fatehpur Sikri, but this question was mostly based on what? Hindu article. So we cannot predict such questions and unlikely to be repeated. Okay, but remember that UPSC has repeatedly asked the buildings from Fatehpur Sikri. That is should be our takeaway. Now, shifting to paintings. What are the questions that UPSC has asked from paintings? Known for mural paintings, right? Which are the areas? Ajanta caves, obviously for murals. Lapakshi temple, given in NCERT, right? So 1 and 2 only. This question could have been to an extent solved by logic also, because do you think murals were possible in stupas? No, because stupas do not have an interior. It's all on the exterior. All the spaces in stupas are open to weather, right? So murals are not feasible. Logic, use it, right? So again, another question from Ajanta. The painting of Bodhisattva Vatparani. Ajanta cave number 1. NCERT figure, right? Then there was a couple of questions regarding Bani Tani, okay, which was from Kishangarh School of Art Painting. In 2019 also there was a question from Mughal emperors who shifted emphasis from illustrated manuscripts to individual portrait. The answer was Jahangir. Okay, Jahangir. Right. This question could have also have been partially solved by NCERTs because there are large number of portraits from Jahangir's period while discussing paintings in NCERT. Okay, so you could have made an indirect assumption from there that Jahangir was the person who shifted it. Right. Now, what are the takeaways that we can very carefully listen to these takeaways because architecture is a very important portion. We suggest that you go through NCERT figures from class 6. Okay. Now we are also saying that the trend of asking from paintings is likely to continue. So be very carefully prepared 4 questions from paintings. You must be very clear with the Mughal and regional schools of paintings. Okay. Now, what are the possible follow-up questions? Mughal paintings, regional school of paintings, and Mughal architecture. Okay. You must be very clear about Mughal architecture, Red Fort, Taj Mahal, Humayun's tomb, etc. Okay. Be very clear on such aspects. Okay. Right. So those were our final takeaways. Okay. So what are our takeaways? Takeaway number 10 was related to handicrafts. Okay, takeaway number 10 was related to handicrafts. Takeaway number 12 was related to what? Religious sites. Takeaway number 11 was related to performing arts. Takeaway number 13 was related to architecture. Focus on these areas. Okay. Now, there are some questions from maps asked in recent years, 2017, 19 and 19. Which are extremely tough. Port of Kakatiya Kingdom, Harappan site, okay, which was tough because most of these people did not know Desalpur. Chandraraj Kordaji you knew, Sogaravasam Mauryan site, this was the answer. Okay. Then Rani Ashoka, answer was Kankanahalli. Now these are extremely difficult questions. We suggest that you prepare for these questions by going through the maps. Okay, but these are extremely difficult questions. Go through these options only, but don't prepare based on these questions. Go to the primary maps. Okay, be familiar with the basic sites of each of these periods, but don't go in detail. Okay, that is, you may not get the investment profit ratio, right? So those are our conclusions. So remember all the 13 takeaways that I just mentioned. Okay, and all these materials will be provided to you in the Telegram channel as per the session. Okay, go through these materials because these are focused on the recent patterns of UPSC. This will cover the most recent trends of UPSC. Please go through them. Focus on these areas. These are the important takeaways. I hope we have made art and culture much more simpler for you. Okay, you can focus on these areas, convert your energies so that you get maximum profits. Okay, please subscribe to our Telegram channel on iLearn IAS Academy. Thank you. You will get more materials on this. Thank you very much.